This is day 55 of the Arukh HaShulchan OC. If you would like to sponsor a forthcoming shir or more than that, the Arukh HaShulchan OC, please contact me directly. Today is Siman Lamed Beis Sif Nun until Siman up to and including Siman Lamed Beis Sif Nun Vav. Sif Nun. Zesh Kos b'Shulchan Aruch. That which it says Shulchan Aruch Sof Sif Chav Hey. Yesh Mishomer Hu Adin Yem Chut Shel Ches Lamala Ein Nogin Zeh Lazeh. If the two parts of the ches, which make kind of like a V on top, don't touch each other, it's not their separation is not apparent. Even though the child reads them as two zaynim, as zos instead of achel, so mutter will become allowed to connect them together with ink. What this means is as follows: based on the principles which we explained. Shirak tzuras osaleim, when the form of the letter is upon them, as long as the form of the letter is upon them. Vainu shapirud korov legamre, the meaning that the distance is very, very slight. Aval bishato is possibly known now. The letter is possibly come nevertheless in shaluk sidrot in terms of writing out of order. Ain't opposed, so it's not a psul. And can be understood, of course. The os kazeh yikru atinoka hogan. That's understood. Obviously, that such a letter will be read by the child the proper way. But the child doesn't read the proper way. It's possible. According to the Gemara, the primary way of determination is with how the child reads it. Well, if he's like if that's the case, when the two parts of the ches, that V does not touch the parts do not touch each other. It also has to do with whether the two parts of the tzura, the form of the letter, is upon. Mainly, if that's the case, it should come out that when the child reads as two zayins, opposed to a ches, its indication it doesn't have the form of a letter. Even to us, it seems it has form of a letter. It should not be anything. There it says, those who say by the top of the ches, has nothing, the child is not the ultimate authority. Rather, in this case, adults can rule. And then because the child who reads this two zaynim, it's because we don't usually see a ches like this in our reading. In our reading, a ches is has a straight line on top, not this V connecting two zayins. He says this because this is Tetemokin Abram. But it doesn't go and that's why we all that in this case, specifically the ches, where the roof of the ches not to which the child is accustomed, that even if they're separated, if we discern them to one letter, you can fix them. Nun Aleph. For his bar, it's already been explained. Those said the vukos zelos freedom letters which became connected to each other, you could separate them. Bagamba seals Hashem, Hashem vukos, and even the letters of the Shem Hashem, they are connected. You could separate them. It's not like erasing the name. It's not erasing the actual body of the letter, but rather that which is between the letters. So therefore, of course, in that case, be very careful not to erase also a little bit of the letter itself, so as not to transgress the prohibition, the Torah of erasing God's name. Mishabur writes that if that's true, if they were came connected at the time of writing, but they came connected after they were finished writing, you can't separate them if they're parts of the letter of the Shem Hashem. If you're not sure if they became connected before by the writing, the time of the writing, or afterwards, you can remove them because it's fake. I guess suffix if you're allowed to remove it, and the suffix would happen. And even if it happened at the wrong time, you might even be allowed to move that. But it's a chiddush, which offhand to me seems a little bit difficult, because normally I think as long as it's nichta behechsher, we're more makel later on if the psul happens later on. But here it sounds like, no, we're more makel if the dibuk happened at the time of the writing, and not if the dibuk happened later on. And I guess this has something to do with the problem of mechikas Hashem, that after if the name is fully formed, that's the issue here. If the name was fully formed, there was a very full ksiva, you can't separate the letters. At least Chatchila can't separate them according to Mishnah Berurah. Might be fake to be lenient in certain cases. But again, if it's not yet a fully formed Shem Hashem, then there's no Yisrael Bechika, then you can separate letters. If it's after a fully formed Shem Hashem, Mishnah Berurah is more machna than Arukh HaShulchan saying that you can't separate the letters because that is a form of Mechika, of a fully finished Shem Hashem. Nun base. Ukmoshe bedin shel shloka sidron yesh b'kuklos. Sorry, let me start over again. Moshe bedin shel shloka sidron. Just like in the halacha of writing in order. Yesh b'kuklos yos mitchilas haksiva. There is in the there is a rule. It can be a problem with the letters from the beginning of the writing. This problem also applies when the letters are erased after the writing. If it was mamerubah, even after a long time. If even one letter is erased altogether, the entire parsha is possible. The takna yevshar, because you can't fix it can't shloka sidron. It'll be out of order. But that's only if it's completely erased. But it became partially erased. The major part of the substance of the ink is removed. But there's still a faint trace of the letter in faint ink. And then in such case the child can still read the letter in the normal way. You can take your pen, pass it over the letter, and fix it to improve the writing. Because the trace of the ink still can be seen where the letter should be. In such a case, is kosher. Also now the letter is kosher. You're fixing it because it's faded. That shouldn't become more ruined over time. That's only when the trace of the ink can be seen on where the letter should be. But if the ink fled altogether, popped off, there's only a vestige of the letter from the rust of the ink, because the ink is acidic and it ate into the cloth, so it's like a burnt its form into the cloth, but the ink is not there anymore. That's no good. Because it's out of order. Mishnah writes according to me, Prima Godim, even if the if there is substance of the ink left, but the upper ink has been peeled off and it's reddish, that's shloka sidron. Chazim Sofer holds that if the change to red happened because of old age, not because of a problem with the ink, hareza, because it's kosher. Because ink does become more reddish as it becomes older. Nevertheless, it's best to refresh it with a pen, and even the shemos in such cases, you're allowed to refresh them by new ink from the pen. Back to the Arukh HaShulchan, the special shimush, special training to know if this is what is left is actually a faint impression of the ink or a burning into the parchment. That is if the ink became spoiled afterwards. If at the time you're writing with discolored ink, a little bit whitish or a little bit reddish. Shuka mariso, that is its color became faded at the time of writing. Possible, it's no good. Doesn't help later on to write over. The ink was not originally black. It's out of order. But if it's black and you want to just blacken it more, less than what's not a problem with it's permissible. Rarely it seems to be in call parsha ksuva shlok with shakrus, and the entire parsha is written in inappropriate and insufficiently black ink. You can fix the whole parsha. She'ein Kad Shlukas Sitron. There's no Shlukas Sitron. Came into called Parsha Kenu because the Parsha was in that same state. Okay, there's a bracket here which we won't understand if we do the Mogen Avram. Don't do Mogen Avram, we're not going to do the Mogen Avram. Kudash, the Bishlokas Sitron, and Chiluk Ben Osa, Achas Larbeot, there's no distinction in out of order whether it's a few or a lot. Nungim, because Rabbi says the Chav Ches, where he says, right, Shuli, Yeshli, Zor, Shuli, Kodesh, Rosh Alamed, Ba'avir HaHei Ches, the top of the Lamed should not go into the Hay or the Hakavi Hay Ches above it. I feel Bloniki even doesn't touch it. From its language, it sounds, Mishon Masha du Basirus Ba'amos, just to be careful about. Aviyesh supposed to come to the Some people would say it's supposed to even be the Evan if it goes in. Avabemis Varv Tsoikim. But the truth is that the base is right. The Vadim Shina Turasos actually taking Makiru puzzle. Certainly if you change the way it let it look, so child can recognize the puzzle. Achzei no Matsui, but that's very rare. Rak Shenichlas Os Dalet Nasa Kehei. Only where it might go into Dalet and come to look like a hay. Mishnah Bur writes that if it goes into the opening of a resh, then it's as if it's going into the opening of a dalet, and it's puzzle. Because that also looks like hay. And even the child reads it right, too bad. Doesn't help. Back to Arukh HaShulchan, when it comes to Rabbeinu Ramah, Be'evan Ezer, Simon Kuv Chav Hey, see if you could ches b'so, as I was shown, in the Shtana Tzuras Os, if the letter changed its form, Shemashach Rosh Lamed Chal Dalet, if you took the top of Lamed into a Dalet, shows near K, when it looks like K, it's puzzle. Like I was shown. But if it goes into Hey or Ches, it doesn't make a total change. It still looks like a Hey or Ches, just to stay in the middle. It's going in the middle of the cavity of the letter on top, doesn't make it look like another letter. It's the only puzzle that came about if you negate it altogether from being a letter. This is not prevalent. Because Sav Rak Lashon, it's a Hirus that says only to be careful, not that it's possible the Evan. The Shabur writes that that's only if the formal letter is not lost altogether. But if the protuberance is such that it changes the form of the letter, meaning that if we cover the upper line at the bottom line below, and so we only see the top of the lamed in the line above, right, and not the body line itself. And if a child in those circumstances can't recognize the letter, it's a shinu in the letter, and it's possible, and you can't fix it because of shalo kisidron. In the early Hebrew word processor, the first one we used was on a Commodore 64. There was no, the laments were a problem because in English there's no letter which goes above the level of all the other letters. The letters go below, but not above. So in the first Hebrew word processors, which were based on English programs, they had problems with the laments. So some had the solution of compressing the lament, that was Commodore 64, so it would go into the, it would take up only the same space as a regular letter. It looked very strange. Or there's another one which is traditional Sidurim, in order to make, for aesthetic reasons, to cut off the head of the lamed. It's just that cutting off the head of the lamed meant that he had a slight little line on top of the lamed, and the program I used to use, Kairari, had to put a double L in order to get the top of the lamed there. Okay, in any event, so the top of the lamed is a problem in the unique problem, and that goes up into the line on top of it. Yeah, where am I up to now? Yeah. In the brackets here, the Arukh HaShulchan says, "V'chein kosev sham be'shmo sivkon lamadalet." This is the brought down by Shmuel and Ibn Ezer. Chagos Mechoyes sivkon lamachas. Chagos Avraham sivkon men. Chen ikar ledina, and that is the primary halacha. Chen gam Ramban should be around that basically in posel. So it's no good look. Well, also the Ramban says posel. Lo nechluim atayis shom shemachshirin. He doesn't know the thesis that says, okay, the Ram Myri, Shishina Sos, and it's supposed to be about where changed the letter and it lost its form. The Tes no Marchav Gavin, Tes not toy about such a case, Gamataz, Yishmakin, and there's not necessarily machlokas and all that is not particularly relevant to us, and it may have been confusing, in which case I apologize. Nun dalet. We learned in Meseches Seifrim that you can't write unless you can read, which makes a lot of sense. In other words, you can't copy just by rote. Like, I guess if we try to copy Japanese or Chinese, those speak the languages, that'd be equivalent to writing Hebrew without knowing how to read it. Last right tefillah without referring to a tikkun or pre-existing tefillah mezuzos. Klomar, meaning the Sefer Torah in lo lichtov al peh shemiteh. Sefer Torah can't write by heart because it might make a mistake. El shunach l'mav Sefer Acher, you have to have another Sefer in front of you. V'yabi b'yichtov, look into it and write. But tefillah mezuzos lichtov al peh, they written ba'al peh mishum the roga b'hem, because people are accustomed to these parashas. V'ein l'chein im yodeh v'loiteh. Sorry, won't make a mistake. If you know that you're not accustomed, ain't lo lichtov. You should use a tikkun. And Mr. Brewer says a person who's just beginning to be a sofer, his stomach doesn't know how to read it properly from by verbal reading, by verbal preparation alone, and especially with Molei Chaser, therefore you should always use a sefer. Back to the if some parts you know well, like Shema B'Yom, so you don't know so well, like Kaddish K'viyacho, so then that what you're accustomed to, you can write Baal Peh. That what you're not accustomed to, you have to write from the writing. The Bach says that it's always a mitzvah namuvcha to copy out of a different source. The Sefer Torah Kamlan, the Torah Shlikos, Kol Table Kam Ksiv Basel. Sefer Torah, you have to read each and every word before you write it. Possible also with mezuzos. Even you're writing based on memory, you must say the word before you write it. I'm sure it's possible to came to Rogabam since you're accustomed to them, ain't sorry. Because same if you're not accustomed to writing, you don't know by heart, and writing out of another book, copying. We certainly have to read every word out loud. That makes like a Sefer Torah before you're there, race and race ayin dalet. And we should be inclined to require reading aloud even when you're accustomed to this parsha. If you're not writing based on other writing, you should not do it verbally relying on a person who tells you what to write. And we can so you have to repeat it with your own words. It's not clear if he means parashas which are not is not accustomed to say about peh. Somebody who's accustomed does not have to read ahead of time. Or perhaps the person who's accustomed. For Abus Kamash is coming to us a kiddush. The gam acher makra. So even if he's accustomed to writing the parashas, and somebody else is also reading it to him, should go back and read for yourself. Because we cannot see you should always read before you write. I mean, verbalize before you write. It says there's no definitive way of learning the Beis Yosef either way. Mr. Pura says that the Kohen Paskin that you have to say the word before you start writing, no matter what, at least the Chatchila. But the evidence might not become possible. Nun hey, at the top of the Sefer Torah, there has to be enough space for the roof of the lamed. Actually, between the lines, there has to be enough space for the roof of the lamed. But a little bit more chalak, a little bit also empty. Kadeshi and Mukha real that the top of the lamed should be surrounded by parchment. Yes, I'm saying chalak lamalo miagag chatzit sporin. Some say you have to have on top of the roofs of the letters half a nail. The Akbar the Safra, which is the concept of Akbar the Safra mentioned in the The mezuzah and sham there's the mezuzahs. That's why Achla Safra is like a clothes peg that holds the cloth in place. It says in mezuzah and sham within the tefillin the same for tefillin became the schema gedolim. And this is a common agreement. And below the line you have to leave enough for an end coffin and nun. A little bit more. In order the ladder should be surrounded by open space. Some people say that's also half a nail. And this should be this is the proper custom. The other opinion does not determine that. There is on the sides you don't really need to leave open any space. Leave a little bit of space also in the side. I'm not getting how you don't have space inside, but it says that you have to leave enough space inside for Mukav Gvil. The Bazay issues, this is probably because it leaves enough, it makes it look very nice. Okay, so maybe it's talking about the beginning and the Sefer, I don't know, but I can't think of a scenario which you're not going to leave on the side. At least there'll be room for Mukav Gvil. Okay, Nun Vav. The tzarich l'niach ben kol teva teva mlo os. Between every word, you must have the empty space of the size of a letter. Mr. Rubura writes even a small letter, which is a yud. Uvein shita l'shit uvein kol os k'mlo sara. Between each and every letter, a hairbreadth. Uvein kol shita v'shita, and between each line, k'mlo shita, the size of line, double space. K'mlo b'sefer Torah, you're there, zero ratio doubt. This is a Sefer Torah. Some say that that you have to leaving open space in the middle, a double spaced mark in between lines, is only required by Sefer Torah. So the Kriya, which made to read, has to be able to be read easily below between mezuzos. And so far, we're not meticulous about this. Sefer Torah it says that this is only aesthetics and only l'chatchila ayin sham. You have to leave a little gap between psukim. I only saw a Sefer Torah that once in my life. V'tamur to revash mevushim also came lo psala. The Vash says if you did that, it's not possible. But you don't require it. Sefer Baruch Shomar. The Arukh HaShulchan is quoting his son here. The Baruch Shem is written by the Arukh HaShulchan's son. It's a Torah Tamima. Probably not. Must be a Kadmon. Because it quotes from the Eli Rabbah. But for a moment, Baruch Shem is Matzvich HaNiach says Rev out when Pasuk Basra and Shab requires a little bit of gap between the psukim. By the Alzai so Kamanaso, and that must have been his intent. The Zel Chatchila. That's preferential, but as I said, it does not seem that our custom is to follow this custom.